got together and wanted to hear from our gubernatorial candidates. So let me do a little introduction on each of them. So we had David Dominguez as the general manager for 101.7 ESPN radio station and is a long-term Republican. Sandra Casas is a retired New Mexico State employee for the Metro Port System and is a long-term Democrat. And then Faith Gallardo is a real estate professional in the apartment industry, overseeing properties in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and she is a libertarian. So the diversity of these three people brought this event to life, and so we, the people of New Mexico, are putting this event on for the rest of the people of New Mexico to find out what's going on. So they wanted to include STUF, Standing Tall United for Freedom, in this, which is a group of young adults that are trying to inform more young adults about government and how it works and how to get involved. So I work with them, was one of the founders of that, so I have the privilege of being the announcer today. And I'll just go through the rules. It'll be a little different today because we don't have all three candidates. Karen Yoni was the only one who showed up today. But the rules for ongoing events will be that well, in case you don't know what this is, so anyone can make a pledge and to ask a question on these debates, and they just need to pledge, it's $1,000 a question, and you can get a group of people together to ask that as well. And you get to ask your question to any of the candidates that are here, and then you get to choose which of the candidates answered the question the best, and whoever you feel did gets the $1,000 toward their campaign. So that's how it works. So the pledge will be awarded to the candidate of the voter's choice. The voter is the person contributing to the pledge. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer each question, and since we only have one today, she won't have a time limit. And then the normal rules, if a candidate should go over their 3 minutes, 1 minute will be deducted from their closing statement. So each candidate will be allowed a 3-minute closing. At the end of the event, we ask that each candidate is respectful and do not interrupt each other. Of course, that won't be an issue today. And if that were violated, we would also add deduct a minute from their closing. If the contributor's candidate does not participate, the pledge is forfeited to the candidate or candidates present. So the contributor must choose of the remaining candidates for the win. We want to thank our volunteers today for being here. Mr. Everett is doing the video for us today and audio, and each candidate is allowed to have their own team recording. So we'll just get started with the questions. So the first one today is, why are so many politicians from all parties having such a hard time answering the question, what is a woman?
Honestly, I don't understand why that's so difficult. A woman is basically you look down and figure out if you're a man or a woman. You're born with two genders, and that's, a male or a female. And that's how we believe in our tribe, is there's only two genders. We do have a two-spirited being that we talk about, but that's more of a spiritual aspect. But literally, not being able to define a woman seems to be peculiar to me because I am a woman. I have given birth to children. I have the reproductive organs to do so. The hormones to do so, and I am, married, and it's biologically clear, and I don't understand why politicians have taken this into the political realm. It's somewhere where government should not go, and I think it's an individualized, understanding of who you are, and so I don't think that people are trying to define each other. It really should be part of government as well as politics. So how they're having hard time doing it, I think they're just they're catering to what's happening right now in the world, and I don't think that's right. They need to stand for the simple understanding of being a representative of the people and not giving into the mud of the latest fad. And that's what I believe.
And our second question is, how would you address the issue of crime in New Mexico as governor?
The issue of crime has to deal with the fact that I think it really goes to our economic stability. Right now, poverty is out of control because we are so poor in this state. When poverty comes in, it has the byproducts, and we know this, the byproducts of poverty are alcoholism, drug abuse, stress, domestic violence, those things that we as humans have to check out from. So what they do is they have to find some sort of, way to deal with it, because poverty is very, very stressful. I come from a very poverty-stricken environment. My tribe, the Indian nations, are poverty-stricken. And from what I know and understand is crime happens is when people don't have the means to get what they want. Their wants and their needs get mixed up, and then they have to survive. And so they basically commit crime, and also crime happens upon them, which they have to also defend themselves. So it gets very aggressive. It becomes a situation where crime becomes rampant. And you see people breaking and entering, stealing, you name it, it's happening out there, especially in Albuquerque. And a lot of people don't like to travel there because we don't know what's going to happen, 1 second from one moment to another. And so crime is so big here in New Mexico that you have to look at it as a paradigm, as how do we alleviate that stress. And when I went down on the parts of Albuquerque into the parks where they had the homeless, and I walked among them and I helped feed them and I talked with them. And a lot of them are veterans out there and people from New Mexico. We had New Mexicans and also out-of-staters. And a lot of them said, yeah, we commit crime because we don't have the means to survive sometimes, so we have to take what we need. And then also domestic violence is a big issue that happens out there. So for us to alleviate that, we have to really see what's happening in the paradigm of the public and to see what they really need. We don't need to be throwing money at it, but we need to make people be able to find individual freedom and also pride in what they're doing, so they can stand up on their own 2 feet. And they do. When people talk about it, they want a job, they want to take care of their family, they want a home. And those things are not afforded to them in this way that New Mexico is working. It's not prosperous, it's very stressful. So crime is rampant because the people are not allowed to be prosperous. So what we have to do is ignite the economy and also help with mental health, because trauma is the gateway to all drugs. Trauma is the gateway to survival. Trauma is the gateway to what is making us very miserable. So when we start to look at those avenues and we start to move through it, I don't think it's about throwing money, it's about being able to listen to the people and providing an avenue for them to have them stand up and be independent and courageous enough to be self-sustaining and also resilient. And that's a word I want to push out there in my campaign, is we have to learn how to be resilient people and do the right thing. So that's what I think about.
Thank you. And I'm just going to go straight to our next question. As governor, how can you ensure the state of New Mexico can protect itself from federal government overreach?
That would be Amendment 10 of the United States Constitution. We need to be able to push federal government overreach. Right now, the federal government is in everything in New Mexico. It's in our forests, it's in our water, it's in the division, it's in the parties, it's in the border, what's happening down in the southern border. It's in everything, even regulation. We have environmentalists coming in and stopping us from managing and having our livelihoods are being impacted because of this. Federal overreach has been consistent since the inception of our state. We've always had federal overreach. We have forestry here. We can't do anything without requesting help, and when something happens, a disaster, we go running to the federal government. So the 10th Amendment needs to be held accountable, and also you have to have a government that understands it so they can stand in the way. And we need to parent the federal government with it, because it's up to the states and up to our people and our representatives to go to DC to legislate for us, but it seems like it's not working that way anymore. But we've had a crisis at the border since I was a little girl, so we need to be able to parent the federal government and tell them they need to get out of our business if they're not going to help us in a positive way, and we're going to have to push them back, and that's with the 10th Amendment. And that's exactly what we're going to have to start with, is because right now, even in this place in Las Vegas, Biden supposedly came here on a plane and drove up here and looked around and thought, oh, okay, well, we'll give him some money. But we don't even know if that money came here yet. Are they having, issues? Because we're having flooding issues now, because all the ash is now running into the water, and you're seeing that they don't have, potable drinking water here, because now the water is completely contaminated. So you're seeing how the federal government actually operates. You can't have a governor to sit and beck and call at the federal level either. You have to have a governor that stands up for the people. hurt people, and that's gonna be me, and I'm the only one that's encouraging them to do that.
All right, next question is what causes inflation and how can the issue of inflation be solved?
The economy, inflation, okay, so as a business owner, I've lost 3 businesses because of inflation, and now it's a recession, but they redefined it. So when they don't take care of the actual economy, all the prices begin to rise. When they did away with our oil and gas, the gas prices begin to rise. Then after that, the shipping costs of every material and item that we ship into our states and our stores have to come up with a markup because now fuel and shipping costs are also higher. So you're seeing actual inflation of everything start to rise, from food to everything, because we had a flower shop. And just to get the flowers, because they're perishable, on the ground back to our shops here, we had to pay extra shipping and also higher fuel costs. And inflation happens when the federal government isn't responsible and does not provide the needs, because demand and the demand, what we're looking at, is very high in our population. They're restricting our beef, they're restricting our food, they're restricting our gas. So the higher the demand, the more expensive and cost of all these items are. And so you're seeing the inflation happen. So it's negligence on the politicians, especially the Biden administration. They didn't know what they were doing when we took out our pipelines and also restricted USA oil. And then you started to see exactly what was happening. There was an inflation. They knew what they were doing, and I think they did it on purpose so that we could suffer, because this is how I really feel about it. But inflation, it basically is caused by actual negligence and idiots at the top who don't know what they're doing.
Here's kind of going back to a previous one, but maybe it's a little more specific. Las Vegas has twice the national average of violent crimes. How would you, as a governor, address that?
Sadly, in New Mexico, we have a revolving door policy. A lot of these criminal acts don't get completed. We go through a judicial system that's broken, and they give very little, repercussions for the actions. They're slaps on the wrist, and they go through the process. They know it, and they get back out, and it's a revolving door. And so if they're not being punished harder, then what happens is they will commit a crime over and over, and they learn how to work the system. And we're seeing this time and time again, from smaller misdemeanors to the big stuff. And we're seeing this, especially with the jail system. There's not enough places to hold it, and the taxpayers are paying out the nose for it. So we're seeing them close down our prisons. We don't have enough room for inmates, and so they just process them and let them out again. So you're seeing a revolving door happen. I think people have learned the system, and they're not afraid of the system anymore. So when they come back for the actual the arraignments and everything that are happening through the judges, they're very light on these criminals, especially the real heinous stuff. You're seeing them walk every time, and so the people that they inflict become afraid, and so they tend, in a smaller community, they know each other, and so they don't do much because they also know who they are, and they will come back to become targets later on. So it actually disrupts the whole community system. So with these acts that happen, we have to make sure that they should pay the price for their actions. But also the society here in the communities, all communities, even where I'm from, we do live in fear, because you know what? If they enter your home, you can't do anything. If they enter your yard, you can't do anything. If they enter a window, maybe you can do something. But you're seeing these criminals also turn around and sue the actual homeowners after they rob them or do something. So I really have been looking into the castle doctrine. I believe that, your home is your castle, and you should be able to pull that trigger if someone comes into your home. And knowing this, the criminals wouldn't enter your home because they'd be like, nope, you can't go in there, because they'll pull the trigger. And I think that we need to be able to have that same society that was intended for us through the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is consistently being attacked. Now we have the red flag law here in New Mexico, so people are afraid to even show their guns or to admit they have guns. And I think the people need to be held responsible for their own freedoms, and also be able to have the right to protect what they have, to keep what they've earned, to protect their children. And I would love to have the castle doctrine in my home, because I'd be like, do not enter my home. Do not come in my house. Because actually, 3 months ago, we had a man enter our house, and he was standing in the hallway in my daughter's doorway. When she came out that morning about 7 o'clock, he was standing right there. And we couldn't do anything, and it was a 3-hour wait before the police showed So he was standing there and he knew who we were. So you're looking at this that, yeah, crimes happen, but you know, we couldn't do anything about it because we have the worst laws in New Mexico when it comes to the actual freedom of the people. So crime has to be evaluated, but we have to look at it from all areas, from different demographics of the towns. Because also on the east side, we also know that the jail system is so corrupt that you do not go to jail to get clean. You go to jail to get high. We know this because the people in the jails have contacted us and they said that they go there and even the security guards are bringing drugs in. It's an actual business, so you're seeing what's happening. And it's bad in New Mexico. So we're gonna have to get really, we're gonna have to get tough. We're also gonna have to have our research and our information in line to make sure that we know each community, depending on what the affliction is, because the blanket legislation isn't gonna cover it. We have to look at it district by district, county by county, and see what really needs to happen. But I really think that our law enforcement, like our sheriffs, they need to be empowered to really be able to handle this, because qualified immunity is another issue that we have to talk about. But people don't really know both sides of the situation. So qualified immunity is what the police officers want to be protected, so if they have to pull their weapon, that they won't be held accountable if something completely goes wrong when they're doing their job. But then on the other side, people say that there are bad cops that use qualified immunity to cause crimes and also to work the system so they will never get caught and they will never go to jail. So there's two sides to it, and we have to relook at that as well. But I know that there are good police officers. I also know there are bad ones, because we've talked to the chief of police, the president, or the chief of all the chiefs of New Mexico, who is telling me that they don't have the power to put the bad apples out of the system. They're told to hold on to them. And so they can't fire them right away, and they don't have enough training. So we have a lot of issues to cover, but that crime is not just a small one-size-fits-all. You have to really get into the dirt and into the weeds with this and figure out what's really happening.
Every year, tons of money is put toward healthcare, yet it seems that more people are getting sick, both nationally and statewide. So what would you do as governor for our healthcare system?
Well, our healthcare system is currently out of control. When you look at the dollar figures, we are paying out the nose for our health. We are not a healthy state. We need the, not free medical. People get this mixed up. We need medical freedom and the right to try. And that's one thing that I did support Trump on this issue is I wanted the right to try. Also the right to preventative medicines, because inside the health and wellness part of New Mexico medical insurances and the government does not recognize preventative medicine, even holistic medicine and wellness medicine as part of the package for medical. I think if we can prevent our illnesses, that we will be able to cut our medical budget, to almost nothing if we learn what really causes cancer. Because I know we have the answers to it, but they're not letting us have it. We know those patents are out there. There's patents on HIV, there's patents on different things because they were engineered viruses and they were engineered diseases for the American people. If we can get those, then we can actually see or figure out what the cures are. Because right now in our medical system in New Mexico, we're not curing anything. We're just medicating everyone and keeping us in the game as long as they can. Because now the next thing we have to look for is renal failure. Because during the whole COVID-19 pandemic that went through, the protocol was remdesivir, and that's what they tried to give me, but we all know that causes liver failure right away. And it only takes 2 doses to do it. So once they ventilate you, then they dose you up, and then maybe you'll live. But that was the protocol, and they wouldn't let us talk about those types of things. But we need to know exactly what they're giving us, and it's not to cure us. It's to take us to the next stage or the next part of our organs or our body shutting down. So our medical is high priced and high dollared, and it's also very restrictive in New Mexico. But we need to let people, especially the Native people, show that they have medicine that can actually help heal things. Things like we need to have, because medical freedom, they restricted us from having it. Ivermectin, they were calling it, the vet medicine, the horse paste. No, it was actually developed and created for humans. And later on, it was adopted by the veterinarian industry, but ivermectin was actually derived from healthy and holistic plants, and so we know this. So freedom inside your choice of how you want to be doctored should be given to the people in New Mexico. And also, even if you're you're laying there by yourself, you shouldn't have to suffer by yourself. I still think they need to have family members because we lost a lot of people on MLG's, her whole, I don't even know what this is called, it was her reign, it was her time in office, but her legacy is we lost so many New Mexicans, thousands, were put in the caskets on her watch. On her watch, we lost so many youth, so many of our family members, you know, and it's heartbreaking to know that she won't even talk about it, and she won't even recognize it, and she will never take responsibility for it, but we know that we had the answers to help with COVID-19, and here we were not able to, we were not given that freedom to pursue, to save our own people. But yes, that's my answer to that.
Many people have come to the conclusion that corruption is just a part of government. How do you plan on ending that? Or what would you have to say about it?
Corruption is in the shadows, and right now people say a lot of things. And when you're transparent enough, I think that you can stop corruption. I think you need to vet your candidates harder. But also, you know, we don't even do legislation. When they go into sessions, we don't get to see it. We don't get to act on it. And there's measures in there that prevent us from interjecting when something bad is coming down the pipeline, especially with the red flag law. I was up there fighting. They did not let us interject and stop it. And that's where corruption festers, is people try to figure out a way to push and pull red money. That's what I call it, is the restrictive money from federal government and also state spending. And the corruption is they try to use that money through nonprofits. They try to give it to, you know, different entities to hide it. And I've been tracking this, and it's a whole other discussion, is the corruption is all basically about the mighty dollar. What the actual plan is to remove the power from these entities and give it back to the people so that corruption is lessened. And what you do is you have to do it on a vote basis. And this is something that we're looking at to, it's really hard to complicated to explain, but when a legislator comes in with a package, especially legislation that has hidden things in it, I always bring up the wildlife bill because that was the most mind-blowing bill that I'd ever seen come across. It was by Karen Bash in Albuquerque. I think she was in the district, I forget what number it was, 64. And she put a bill through the legislation that was talking about wildlife. Section 1 was wildlife, hunting, permitting, you name it. Section 2 was about pedophilia and how to lessen their, whatever they were doing. And I was drinking coffee that morning, I'm like, what is this? And it was crazy, and just to call in, we couldn't even get through to the legislation, and that was gonna hit the floor that morning. And they didn't even let us see it, and so the time frame for us to review bills isn't there. So we have to be transparent and be able to allow people to hit that stop button, thinking, hey, wait a minute, what is this? And back it back out, but they don't, they hide us. And then they restricted us during that time when that bill went through. They had a whole fence around the roundhouse. Then they wouldn't let us in. Then they wouldn't let us come without a vaccination. Then they wouldn't let you in without a mask. And so you start seeing the measures that they're putting forth just so they could push bills through. And we were just going through this Constitution of New Mexico. Look how thick it is compared to the actual Constitution of the United States of America. You know, here, this one, they have actual amendments that were pushed through the day before election on November 2nd of 2020. What? So you're seeing how corrupt it is. And I think it's really left up to the person who you elect. But in my administration, when we get there, when the legislator comes forth and they do something kind of wonky, I think we're going to actually put them on live. We have so much technology now. It's like, okay, well, let's talk to your district about this. And I will rip into the districts. This is your legislature. This is your representative, and this is what they're pushing. And I think if I have a more of an open communication with the public of New Mexico, that would keep all of us honest and on track, just like we have been doing right now. But when people come at you and attack you and calling you corrupt, it's interesting because when we sit here, we watch them, and we're very patient. We notice the guilty dog always barks first. So corruption has to be unraveled, and it has to be the will of the people.
And our last question for today is just, what is your definition of freedom?
Oh boy, I always talk about this because being a Navajo woman, and if you were to watch that video from Turning Point USA and the drone goes up and there's wild horses running, when I think about it, everyone that came to New Mexico came from another country, Europe, South America, somewhere. It was Native people, the America First people that were here first, which was my tribe. We were here, as almost the Pueblos and the Apaches and the Comanches and the other Native tribes all across America. We were the only people in this continent right now that can actually say that we were a free people. We were absolutely free. And we could be one with nature and be at peace, and we had prosperity, and we had actual love and not worry in our hearts. My definition of that is what I want for everybody. For you to be able to execute and walk through your life without fear of government, without being afraid of losing everything you worked hard for. I want you to keep what you earn, for you to be content knowing the future that you created for your children will be there and not be under attack, and for you not to worry about it. If you're worried about it, then we have not fully come to find our freedom and our liberties. So for me, my definition of freedom is to have absolute peace in our lives and moving forward, and that we know we did everything we could to save our children's futures. And we did not cripple them because we had legislated and over-legislated amendments to where they cannot function in the future. But my definition of freedom is for me to literally go home and be able to know that I have absolute peace and that I will not be ever, oppressed and suppressed by a government that hates me. And that's basically what I want for all of America.
Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll get the other candidates to come. This is our second day. Yesterday was in Albuquerque, and it was also in Lake Huron, so hopefully they'll come to one of them. I believe our next one that we have scheduled, or that we're getting scheduled, is in Tucumcari on Friday. So tell your friends, get more people to come. That would be awesome. And yeah, so thank you guys for coming and listening.